I don't even know if this is worth continuing to film. If I drop my phone though, I will absolutely Well, actually, I could just stop the car and pick it up. Oh. My decision to visit Iran goes back to about 2011 when I started learning Farsi Persian, which is the language that's spoken in Iran. And I have continued to learn it up until now, and I wanted the opportunity to use it in practical situations. I've done the same for other languages that I've learned in other countries, so Iran is really no different. Currently, it is not possible to fly to Iran directly from the United States, so you do have to fly into the European continent or somewhere else in the world beforehand. So I flew to Istanbul through Turkish Airlines, and I also took Turkish Airlines from Istanbul to Tehran. Here we have the entry into Istanbul, which was lovely. I spent the night in an airport hotel so that I could fly to Tehran the next day. I didn't want to do 2 flights at once. I was so tired after the first leg. So I boarded my Turkish Airlines flight to Tehran the following morning, and the in-flight map was a little bit suspicious because it showed Tehran just under Moscow. And no, that's not where it is. I was a little bit concerned because I thought there were maybe 2 Tehrans and I booked a ticket to the wrong one. Fortunately, about 3 hours later, we did end up in Iran, and I was very happy that I ended up in the correct country. Here you can see we are coming into Tehran's Imam Khomeini International Airport, south of the city. Once you get to Iran, I recommend changing your US dollars to rial. You'll get about, in the best circumstances, 34,000 rial to a dollar. If you take smaller bills with you, you will get a lower rate. I had 20s, so I got about 30,000 rial per dollar. Once you are leaving the airport, you will see that Tehran has a ridiculous amount of traffic. I did not even get the worst of it on film, but there are just cars everywhere, and let me tell you, the road rules of the United States do not apply whatsoever. It's crazy how people are just in and out, cutting each other off. It's really a sight to see. And it's definitely lively, that's for sure. Don't expect any casual drives in Tehran. One of the main tourist attractions in Tehran was Golestan Palace, which is pictured here. I'm not a huge fan of museums, but I do like historical sites, and this is a very nice one because there are gardens, there are tombs. It's relatively peaceful in comparison to the extremely busy atmosphere of downtown Tehran. Going home after a day of touristing in the city, we did decide to take public transportation for a change of pace. During rush hour, it is crazy, so I recommend staying away during those hours. It's extremely crowded. The subway cars are quite small in comparison to those in DC, at least where I come from. Tehran is a city that is bordered by mountains in the north, and because there are so many cars in the city, there's a lot of pollution there. I think that's a well-known fact. If you're sensitive to smells or car exhaust, in great quantities, I would take care. It is definitely noticeable when you're out and about on the streets. Afterwards, we did take an overnight train to Shiraz because I really wanted to see Persepolis, Takht-e-Jamshid. So it is a 13 to 14 hour train ride, as you'll see, and we slept in the car. I asked for a first class cabin, private cabin. Such a thing doesn't really exist, so you can just get the most expensive ticket, which is basically a room that you share with 3 other people. It's about $25 a ticket, which isn't too bad considering it's a 14-hour train ride. So if you want, you could just buy all 4 seats and have the car to yourself. The train is quite typical, I guess, if you've traveled on Amtrak in the United States. It's nothing too different. Luxury and glamour really aren't associated with this mode of transportation. But when I woke up, I was pleasantly surprised because it was the first time I saw the landscape that exists between Tehran and Shiraz, and it's really interesting and quite beautiful. Something very different than what I'm used to seeing. We exited the train a few stops north of Shiraz proper because we were visiting 2 historical sites in the north. It was really quite a deserted area, but somehow we got a taxi to come pick us up. I was really pleased about that. Yeah, but really quite an interesting landscape once we got off the train. And the 2 sites that we were interested in seeing that day were Takht-e-Jamshid, which is Persepolis, and also Naqsh-e Rostam, which is nearby, but it's actually pictured here. And it is 4 tombs built into the side of a cliff. Very, very beautiful site. And in addition to the 4 tombs, there is also a mysterious building that nobody really knows what it's for, but it's really interesting to see nonetheless. It's possibly like a Zoroastrian fire temple, or it could have just been a storage hut. Nobody really knows. Anyway, this site is extremely old. We're talking like way BC, like super old, and it's probably some of the oldest architecture I've ever seen in my life, so I was very pleased about that. After Naqsh-e Rostam, we visited Takht-e-Jamshid, Persepolis, and this was a little bit more crowded in comparison because it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It is a city that was conquered by Alexander the Great and burned down, unfortunately, by his troops at that time. So there's really just remains here that were hidden for centuries until locals in the area stumbled upon them and we learned what they really were. If you're interested in cuneiform script, which I really am, it's basically the alphabet, so to speak, of the Hittite, Old Persian, Babylonian languages. You can see a lot of inscriptions at the site here, which was really fascinating for me. When we left this site, there were some camels lining the road, but it wasn't like anything super traditional or authentic. I think it was more gimmicky, but the camel looks relatively happy, so I'm okay with it. Food in Iran. This is actually a big deal, and I wish I could spend more time on it. People take their food super seriously, and it was delicious every time, and I never had any issues health-wise. So here's a typical example of something that I would get at a restaurant. It's basically chicken in kebab form, some grilled vegetables, and rice that is topped with saffron. You'll generally get the rice at every meal. Whether or not you get a meat dish is up to you. There are a lot of vegetarian options, and it's just delicious and very cheap. I think this meal cost maybe $6, which is like a third of what it would have cost in the US. So very delicious. Don't worry about the sanitation or anything like that. Iran is a modern country in the most important respects, and you shouldn't have anything to worry about there if you just use common sense. Shiraz is an older city than Tehran. Tehran is like less than 300 years old, really, as the city that we know it as today, whereas Shiraz has been around for, you know, thousands of years, I guess, in some capacity. So you can see that there's a lot of historic buildings, and, you know, there's some controversy because they're knocking some of the buildings down to create newer ones, but I mean, you definitely still get a flavor of this really authentic Iranian city, historical city. Really quite nice to look at. Still busy in terms of, you know, car traffic, but very nice. Now, there are also a lot of historical sites in Shiraz, such as the tombs of Saadi and Hafez, and you can see that there's a lot of visitors at those sites because poetry is a huge part of Iranian culture, and I completely understand why there were so many people there paying their respects. Lovely sights. We did also visit a shrine that was dedicated to the brother of one of the imams of Islam, and unfortunately I did not realize at the time, but photography in any form, the sign even says, even on your mobile, don't take any photos or video. We took it, so I apologize for that, and I won't show any more of this site. We did take some lovely pictures and video, but I highly recommend visiting the site if you are in Shiraz. After Shiraz, I did have to return to Tehran. We took the overnight train again. We had a lot of spectacular views on the way back, which was nice, and obviously because it was an overnight train, I did sleep, you know, probably like 8 hours of the journey, which helped. Very nice altogether. And once I got back to Tehran, I just had another day before my flight home. And although it was a code share flight, I did receive an Iran Air boarding pass, which I thought was very cool because how many of my friends have those? Probably none. I'm on some type of cable car. I have to control it by myself. I'm pushing down on a gas pedal with my hand right now. It shouldn't really be up to me when I stop this thing, right? I should just keep going and only stop if the person in front of me has stopped. So I don't know. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do when it comes to that point. So it turns out you do have to control the brake yourself. And there are just little signs that say slow down, and you just have to know. It's beautiful.